First, though, to the Olympics, and whether or not former drugs cheats should ever be allowed to represent their country at the Olympics provokes a heated debate within the sport of athletics particularly.
Yes, many people think that once an athlete is tested positive, they shouldn't be able to go to the Olympic Games again. But as we've been hearing this morning, the British Olympic Association has lost its legal fight to impose that lifetime ban.
Well, Diane Modahl's seen both sides of the argument. She competed at 4 Olympic Games for Great Britain in the 800 metres and had a drug ban overturned in the 90s. Good morning, Diane. So you really do know what it's like from both sides, because you were, well, the convicted is not the word, but you were found sort of guilty of a drug offence, which turned out then to be unproven. Just explain briefly what your position was.
Well, I was falsely accused of taking testosterone to make me run faster. And of course, knowing that I had never cheated, I was faced with this almost impossible position or decision to try to not only defend my reputation, but also get back on track. And to be honest, it was and still is the most devastating news I've ever had to hear.
Turned out the sample they'd taken was mishandled, which gave a false positive in your case.
That's right. So when I gave the sample after a competition in Portugal, it was left to stand on a windowsill for 72 hours in the middle of the summer. And that was news for everybody, because what was allowed to happen was the sample was allowed to degrade, and it gave rise to a false positive result.
What do you think then about today's news? The fact that athletes who have been convicted, or it has been proved they've taken drugs, will now be eligible to be considered to represent their country at the Olympic Games?
Well, here's the difficulty, and Bill's absolutely right. There is a big debate amongst athletes, coaches, parents, aspiring runners. If, for example, you agree, as I do, that once you have served your ban, you should then be allowed to compete, that makes you come across as supporting cheats. But of course, that's not the case. All of us who love sport want those who cheat to receive the harshest of punishments. But I think where the BOA struggled, and possibly why they lost this ruling, is because they didn't actually have the support of everybody else. And I think that's what you need. I think unless they get the support of other British Olympic associations, there is always going to be an inconsistency in the rules. That doesn't protect the sport, and it certainly doesn't protect the athletes.
And the difficulty is also the message it sends out to drugs cheat, which is, well, if you do get caught, it's not the end of the world, because you might get away with it, but also if you do get caught, you'd be back within 3 years anyway.
Right, and I think WADA has to take the major responsibility here. So the World Anti-Doping Agency have to get tougher on their penalties, because let's face it, 2 years is not a deterrent, is it? I don't think it sends out any sort of message that if you cheat at the highest levels, you will be severely punished. 2 years is nothing.
So you think people should be given a second chance to represent their country, but first they should serve a tougher penalty? Well,
two things. I think firstly, the bans need to be more stringent. There needs to be harsher. There's talk of a 4-year ban and perhaps missing an Olympic Games as well. I would agree with that. So a 4-year ban, but you miss the next Olympic Games. But I think to have a lifetime ban then runs into the situation of no remedy. So if in my situation, for example, where an athlete has been falsely accused, there is no remedy because there is a blind faith that science is going to
get the right answer,
get the right result.
And in your case, it cost you everything to prove your innocence, didn't it? You paid a very high price.
My confidence was crushed. And to be fair, I was never the same athlete when I came back. I won medals again. I was, was able to go to Olympic Games again, but it was never the same. And emotionally, financially, all of those key things, never the same.
Can I just ask you, Diane, if Dwayne Chambers and David Miller appeared at the Olympics in London, what kind of response do you think they might get from fellow athletes and also from fans watching as well?
Well, I think from fellow athletes, they will find it incredibly difficult. And I know that Di Green, world champion, has already said that he will be blanking any athlete who has tested positive and is now allowed to compete in the Olympic Games. I think from the fans and from the supporters, and certainly people I've spoken to, a lot of them are actually philosophical. A lot of people say, if you've followed the rules, having served your ban, then you should be allowed to compete.
OK. Diane, thanks very much.
Thanks very much indeed. A couple of, we've already had quite a big response on this, so do keep getting in touch with us on that this morning, 17 minutes past 7.
Coming up on the programme.